I'm not the type of girl who belongs in places like this. The observation sounds like something my mother would say, which makes it probably the most dangerous thought I've had all night. But standing in the entrance of Dante's, a restaurant so exclusive I'd never heard of it until 3 hours ago. I can feel the truth of it in my sternum. These women know how to exist in spaces like this. Their shoulders sit differently. Their jewelry doesn't catch light. It absorbs it. I'm wearing a dress my sister lent me, which means I'm wearing someone else's confidence, and we both know borrowed things fit wrong. You look beautiful, Marcus says, and I believe him because Marcus has never lied to me. In 2 years of dating, he's been many things. Distracted, occasionally cruel in that thoughtless way. People are when they're busy, focused on things I don't fully understand, but not a liar. Stop fidgeting. I stop fidgeting. I'm good at doing what I'm told, which Marcus appreciates. It's one of the things he says he loves about me, in moments when he remembers to say he loves me at all. The restaurant is all dark wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where conversations happen in undertones and the clink of glasses sounds intentional. Marcus has a hand on my lower back, guiding me toward the private dining room, and I'm still thinking about borrowed confidence when we enter. There are 12 people inside. I recognize none of them. What I notice instead is how the room tilts toward one man. He's sitting at the head of a table that probably costs more than my entire apartment, reading something on his phone with the kind of focus that makes everyone else in the room invisible. He's older than Marcus by perhaps a decade, maybe early 40s, with dark hair cut short, expensive in a way that suggests he doesn't think about money. He's wearing a suit that was probably tailored when he was still in the womb, and his hands, resting on the table, are the hands of someone who's never had to work for anything, or someone who's worked for everything in ways that destroy people. Marcus's grip tightens on my back. A signal. A warning. Everyone, Marcus announces, and his voice is different than it is with me. Sharper, more careful. This is Elena. The room turns to look at me. 12 pairs of eyes, and I'm suddenly aware that I'm trembling. My hands are trembling. This dress is trembling. Elena, Marcus continues, and I hear him swallow, which is strange because Marcus doesn't swallow like that. This is Alessio Moretti. The man at the head of the table looks up. If I could describe the moment objectively, I would say his eyes are dark, that his face is handsome in an austere, undamaged way that suggests a childhood in wealth and adulthood in power. I would note that he's younger than his positioning suggests, that his expression is unreadable, that the temperature of the room has genuinely changed. What I actually do is smile. Not on purpose. It's automatic, the same smile I give to baristas and bank tellers and people who hold doors open. A reflex, a ghost of politeness that my body produces while my mind is screaming something it doesn't have language for. He stares at me while I smile. The silence extends past the point where silence should logically end. I can feel Marcus's hand shaking on my back. I can feel the other people in the room holding their breath. And Alessio Moretti, whatever he is, watches me with an expression that suggests he's seeing me for the first time and the last time simultaneously. Marcus? He says quietly, and his voice is the voice of someone accustomed to obedience. Come with me for a moment. It's phrased as a request, but no one in the room mistakes it for one. Marcus hesitates. His hand drops from my back. I watch him cross to Alessio. Watch them disappear through a door that I didn't know existed. Watch the remaining people in the room suddenly become very interested in their food. I'm alone at the table with 11 strangers, and my smile finally falls. One of the women, blonde, sharp as a knife, leans over to me. First time at this restaurant, I say. She doesn't smile back. First time meeting Alessio Moretti, I meant? Yes. You smiled at him, she says, and it's not a question. I smile at people. It's just a thing I do. But even as I'm saying it, I'm realizing that I didn't smile at anyone else. That somehow, while my conscious mind was constructing sentences and pretending to be someone who belonged, my body had made a choice. Don't do it again, she says, and her tone suggests this is kindness. Marcus doesn't return for 7 minutes. I count them because I have nothing else to do except sit in the stress that isn't mine and wonder what decision is being made in a room I can't access about a man whose name I just learned. When he comes back, he looks shaken. His jaw is tight in a way that suggests he's been holding it like that for the entire 7 minutes. He sits down without speaking to me, pours himself a drink, and drinks it in one swallow. "Are you okay?" I ask. He doesn't answer. The meal continues around us. Conversations that sound like they're happening through water, and I eat food that tastes like nothing, because I'm aware, with the kind of certainty that usually only arrives after a disaster, that something has just happened, something with weight, something with consequences. Alessio Moretti doesn't rejoin us. He's simply gone, leaving behind a space at the table that everyone carefully doesn't acknowledge. But when Marcus finally stands abruptly and mutters something about needing to go, I look back toward the room where he was sitting. He's standing in the darkened hallway watching us leave. Our eyes meet for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for me to see that he's looking at me the way a collector looks at something he wants, not in a gentle way, not in a way that suggests he's thinking about permission, long enough for me to understand that I've made a terrible mistake. That smile was a mistake. Everything that comes after it has already been decided. Marcus doesn't talk to me for 3 days. It's worse than fighting would be. Fighting would mean explanations, accusations, opportunities to defend myself. This is something else, a punishment, administered through silence. A cold shoulder that extends to the entire architecture of our relationship. He sleeps in the apartment, but he sleeps turned away. He eats meals at the kitchen table while I'm in another room. When I try to touch his arm, he moves. On the 4th day, he finally explains. "You can't see him again," he says, and we're standing in the kitchen and the light is very bright and I'm completely unprepared for this conversation to be about me. "You understand that?" Whatever that was, whatever happened at dinner, nothing happened at dinner, I interrupt. I smiled. People smile. "People like you don't smile at people like him," Marcus says, and there's something in his voice that sounds almost afraid. "You don't understand what you did. Then explain it to me." He runs his hand through his hair, and I watch him wrestle with something, whether to tell me the truth or some version of it that will keep me plausibly ignorant. Alessio Moretti is not someone you attract attention from casually. He doesn't notice things by accident. He noticed you, Elena, and that's not nothing. "I was polite," I say. "I smiled because I was nervous." "I know why you smiled," Marcus says, and the gentleness in his voice is worse than anger would be. That's the problem. He leaves for work. He doesn't kiss me goodbye. The following week, I see Alessio Moretti's name in the news. Not the regular news, something more obscure. A Society page article about a charity gala. There's a photo of him standing next to a woman in a diamond choker, and his expression is completely blank. The expression of someone enduring obligation. I shouldn't look at the photo multiple times. I definitely shouldn't download it. The fact that I do is concerning enough that I delete my browser history, which feels paranoid until Marcus asks me, very casually, if I've been in contact with anyone from the dinner. The way he asks with the careful tone of someone who already suspects the answer tells me that the dinner wasn't as private as I thought it was. No, I lie. Of course not. "Good," he says. "Keep it that way. Please, Elena, I'm asking you as someone who wants you to be safe." The way he says it makes my stomach drop, because Marcus is selfish in a fundamental way, and the fact that he's asking me for something that benefits only me suggests that my safety might be everyone's concern, including Alessio Moretti's, especially Alessio Moretti's. 2 weeks later, Marcus tells me he has to go out of town, a business trip, 4 days, maybe 5. He's vague about the details, but Marcus is always vague, so I don't push. I kiss him goodbye. He lets me, which feels like forgiveness, and I spend the first night alone in the apartment feeling something I don't immediately identify. It takes me until the second night to understand that it's relief. The apartment feels larger without him. I can breathe in a different way. I spend Saturday afternoon in my studio apartment with all the windows open, reading a book that Marcus would consider intellectually beneath him, drinking wine that came from a regular grocery store, and feeling genuinely happy in a way that I haven't felt in months. It's while I'm in this state of dangerous contentment that someone knocks on my door. I open it without checking the peephole because I'm not the kind of person who's learned to be paranoid yet, and standing in the hallway is a man I've never seen before. He's wearing a suit that costs more than my monthly rent, and his expression suggests that he's been annoyed for a very long time. "Ms. Elena?" he asks, though it's not really a question. "Yes, Mr. Farrelly. Moretti would like to speak with you. Now, please." I look down at myself. I'm wearing shorts and a tank top, no bra, and my hair is in a messy bun that suggests I've given up on civilization. "I don't think that's now," he repeats, and there's nothing threatening in his tone, which makes it infinitely more threatening. "I can't just leave my apartment with a stranger." He smiles like I've said something charming. "I'm not a stranger. I work for Mr. Moretti. You'll be perfectly safe." The thing is, I believe him. That's the terrifying part. Whatever Alessio Moretti is, whatever it means that Marcus was afraid of him, the man in my doorway is genuinely promising that I won't be harmed. He's promising this like it's a guarantee, like his word is backed up by something more substantial than words. "Give me 5 minutes to change," I say. He waits in the hallway. I shower in 60 seconds, dress in clothes that feel like armor, and stare at my phone for a moment. Whether to call Marcus, whether to call the police, whether to do literally anything other than go with this man before deciding that I've already made whatever choice led to this point. I made it when I smiled at Alessio Moretti. Everything else is just consequences. The car is a Mercedes, the interior leather and quiet. The man he introduces himself as Vincent, but I suspect that's not his real name, drives me through the city with the kind of efficiency that suggests he's made this journey many times. We don't speak. The radio plays jazz, something instrumental and sophisticated, and I watch the city transform from my familiar neighborhood into parts of town I've never explored. We end up at a building that looks like old money decided to make architecture. It's a converted warehouse in some reclaimed part of the city, the kind of place that's been written up in magazine features about urban redevelopment. The ground floor is exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. The upper floors are private. The elevator is keyed. Vincent uses a card, and we rise without speaking. When the doors open, I'm standing in a hallway that extends in both directions, softly lit, completely empty. Vincent gestures toward the right, and I walk toward an open door at the end of the corridor. Alessio is standing at a window that overlooks the city. He's still wearing his suit, though he's removed the jacket, and his shirt sleeves are rolled up past his elbows in a way that seems deliberately casual. His back is to me. "Leave us," he says without turning around, and Vincent disappears. "You can't just have people pick me up," I say, because my first instinct is to establish boundaries, even though I'm in a room with someone who clearly doesn't recognize boundaries as applicable to himself. That's kidnapping. "Is it?" He turns to face me, and his expression is contemplative in a way that suggests he's genuinely asking. "You came willingly. You didn't scream. You didn't run. By what definition is it kidnapping? I didn't think I had a choice." "You always have a choice, Elena. You simply chose to come." He moves toward me, and I have to fight the impulse to step backward. "That's the first true thing you should understand about me. I don't take things from people who aren't willing, but I'm very good at understanding what people actually want, as opposed to what they think they should want." "I want to go home," I say, "but it doesn't sound true." "No," he says simply. "You don't. You don't." The worst part is that he's right. I'm terrified. Yes, my hands are shaking and my stomach feels like it's been replaced with something cold and heavy, but underneath the terror is something else. Something curious. Something that's been asleep for a long time and is waking up in this room with this man who collects things like me. "Your boyfriend," he continues, and the shift in topic is so abrupt it takes me a moment to follow. "Has a debt to my family. An old debt. The kind that doesn't get forgiven. I don't understand. He borrowed money, significant money, with terms that seemed clear at the time but have become problematic. Alessio moves to a bar along one wall and pours amber liquid into a crystal glass. He doesn't ask if I want one. The debt is approximately 7 years old. He's been making minimum payments, which is insulting, but I've allowed it because I was patient. "Is this about the dinner?" I ask. "Did I do something to make this worse?" "You smiled at me," he says, and when he looks at me, there's something in his eyes that suggests I've asked the most naive question in the history of questions. That changed the calculation. One smile doesn't change anything. One smile changed everything, he corrects. You see, I was prepared to let the debt collect interest indefinitely. I was prepared to let your boyfriend live his life under the understanding that at some point I would come to collect. The timing was flexible, but then you smiled, and I realized something. What? That I want something now, he says. Sooner than later. I want to stop being flexible. The implication settles over me like smoke. I understand what he's saying without him saying the words. The debt is still there, still owed, still impossible to pay. But now there's a secondary currency being discussed. Now there's something I have that he wants, and I don't even know what it is yet. You want me too. I can't finish the sentence. Not yet, he says, and his tone suggests that he's being kind, that this refusal is a gift. I want you to understand first. I want you to understand that this isn't casual, that when you come back here, and you will come back, it's with full awareness of what it means. And what if I don't come back? He smiles, and it's the smile of someone who's never met resistance, that he didn't already account for. Then Marcus will have an unfortunate accident. His debts will be inherited by his family members, systematically, until the debt is paid. The amount will compound. It will never stop. It will follow his mother through her financial ruin, follow his sister through her career, follow anyone he's ever loved into the kind of darkness that takes lifetimes to escape. That's not fair, I whisper. Fair? He repeats, like the word is something he's found on the sole of his shoe. Elena, fairness is a concept that poor people developed to make rich people feel guilty. It doesn't actually exist. What exists is consequence. And I'm going to teach you to respect consequence, because you're going to be living with yours. Vincent drives me home without speaking. When he drops me off at my apartment building, Alessio's man hands me an envelope. Inside is a business card, just a number and a note written in handwriting so precise it looks printed. I'll call when I'm ready for you. I shower for an hour and watch my hand shake in the mirror. Marcus comes home the next day. He takes one look at me and asks if I'm sick. I tell him yes, and it's not entirely a lie. I'm sick with knowledge, sick with the weight of choices I didn't understand I was making, sick with the reality that the person I've been trying to love my way into commitment with has built a life on lies and debts. Did anyone contact you? He asks. And there's something in his voice that suggests he already knows the answer. No, I lie again. No one contacted me. He doesn't seem relieved. 3 weeks pass in a state of suspended animation. I go to work. I'm a graphic designer for a marketing firm, which is the kind of job that lets me fade into the background, which I've always appreciated, but which feels like a cruel irony now. I go to therapy, a standing appointment I've had for 2 years that I've never mentioned to Marcus. My therapist's name is Dr. Sarah, and she has the kind of face that suggests she's heard everything, so I spend the sessions talking about childhood, about my relationship with my mother, about why I struggle with boundaries, everything except what's actually happening. Alessio Moretti doesn't call. Every day that passes without the number on that card becoming activated is a day that I exist in a state of anxious waiting. I catch myself reaching for my phone. I catch myself imagining his voice. I catch myself wondering what ready for you actually means and whether I'm terrified or anticipating it. By week 2, I'm having dreams. They're not explicit, which is somehow worse. They're conversations that don't happen, moments where he touches my arm and I can feel the specific pressure of his fingers. They're the kind of dreams that wake me up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing and my skin too sensitive for the sheets. Marcus is in the apartment less and less. He claims work is demanding, which might be true, but there's also the sense that he's trying to stay away from me, or maybe trying to stay away from what might happen if Alessio Moretti shows up at our home. On day 22, my phone rings. It's a blocked number, but I know who it is before I answer because I've been expecting this call for 3 weeks and my body recognizes it before my mind has processed what's happening. Elena, Alessio says, and the sound of my name in his voice is like something essential clicking into place. I'm ready for you. I can't just, I start, but he cuts me off. You can. You will. Vincent is downstairs. He hangs up. I'm at work. I'm supposed to be presenting mock-ups to a client in 15 minutes. I'm wearing a pencil skirt and a blouse that doesn't feel like it belongs to me. And I'm about to become the kind of person who walks out of her job without explanation. The alternative is finishing a presentation, going home to Marcus, waiting for whatever Alessio has decided my purpose is in this apparatus of power and debt that I've stumbled into. I take my purse and tell my manager that my mother has had an accident. It's a lie I learned from Marcus, a lie that's vague enough not to be questioned, specific enough to seem real. Vincent is parked in the loading zone. The drive to the building. I'm starting to think of it as his building, though I have no idea if he actually owns it. Takes 9 minutes. He uses the same elevator key. The hallway is the same soft light and silence. This time, the door to his apartment is closed. I knock. "Come in," Alessio calls from somewhere inside. The apartment is exactly what I would have imagined if I'd allowed myself to imagine it. Minimalist, expensive, cold in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the city below. The furniture is the kind of design that prioritizes aesthetics over comfort. There are no photographs, no personal items, nothing that suggests a human being actually lives here as opposed to using it as a stage set. He's in the kitchen, cooking. This is not what I expected, and my shock must show on my face because he smiles a real smile, not the calculating expression from before. "You expected me to summon you here and have wine waiting?" He's using a knife with precision, cutting vegetables into pieces so uniform they could be measured. "I'm not entirely predictable, Elena." "I didn't think you cooked," I say. "There are many things you haven't thought," he replies, "but it's not unkind. Come here." I walk to the kitchen island and stand on the opposite side from where he's working. This close, I can smell him something clean and expensive and fundamentally masculine in a way that makes my stupid body react. My stupid body has been reacting to the idea of him for 3 weeks, and now that he's actually here, in the same space, the reaction is strong enough to be physically painful. "What are we doing?" I ask. "We're having dinner," he says, "while we talk about the terms of your participation in my life." Participation, I repeat. That's a strange word for it. "I use strange words when I'm being careful," he says. "And I'm being very careful with you, Elena, even if it doesn't feel like it." He cooks while we stand in silence. He makes pasta from scratch, the dough rolled out on the marble countertop with the kind of precision he brings to everything in a sauce that simmers on the stove. He pours wine without asking if I want it, which I appreciate because I would have said no out of caution, and I desperately want the wine. When dinner is ready, he plates it with the care of someone who understands that presentation is a form of respect. We eat at a table that seats 8, sitting at perpendicular ends, and I'm acutely aware that this is both more and less intimate than I expected. "Your boyfriend," he says after we've eaten in silence for several minutes, "is a coward." I want to defend Marcus. I want to say something about how he's just trying to survive, how he made a mistake years ago and he's been trying to atone for it. Instead, I say, "He is. That must be difficult for you." "Is this a pity conversation?" I ask. "Are you going to seduce me by making me feel understood?" He puts his fork down. "What an interesting assumption. You think I need to seduce you?" The words hang between us, and I realize I've made an error. I've revealed something, that I'm thinking about being seduced, that I'm capable of being seduced by him, that the possibility exists in my mind as something to be prevented rather than something that's already been decided. "I don't want to be here," I say, trying to reclaim ground I've lost. "Yes, you do," he replies. "You want to be here desperately. The question is whether you're going to admit it, or whether we're going to spend the next several months pretending that you're here entirely against your will." "Why does it matter?" I ask. "If I'm here because of Marcus's debt, if I'm here as collateral or payment or whatever I am to you, does my desire actually change anything?" "Everything," he says simply. "Because I'm not interested in compliance. Compliance is boring. Power is boring if it's not reciprocated in some way. What I want is for you to understand that you chose this. You chose to smile at me at that dinner. You chose to get in Vincent's car. You're choosing to sit at my table right now, and eventually, You're going to choose to accept what's between us, and it's going to matter that you made that choice. Why are you telling me this? I ask. He stands, walks around the table, and I realize that I'm holding my breath. He stops beside me, doesn't touch me, and looks down at my face with an expression that suggests he's memorizing something crucial. Because I'm going to be very careful with you, he says, and I want you to know that the care is intentional. I'm not good at gentleness, Elena. I'm good at taking things, at controlling them, at making them mine. But he reaches out and touches my cheek with one finger, and the sensation is like being struck by lightning. You're going to require me to learn something new. I don't pull away from his touch. The traitorous, pathetic truth is that I want more of it. I want his hand to flatten against my face. I want to feel the weight of his palm against my skin. I want something I don't have language for. What happens now? I whisper. Now, he says, and his hand drops away, which feels like a punishment. You go home. You tell Marcus that we've come to an arrangement regarding his debt. You tell him that you'll be spending certain evenings here with me. You tell him nothing else. And if he refuses, then the debt becomes immediately due, Alessio says, and the casual tone of it suggests I already know this. But he won't refuse. He'll be relieved. He walks me to the door. He doesn't kiss me, doesn't make any gesture that could be construed as intimate, but the absence of touch feels more significant than touch would be. He's demonstrating something, that he can want something and not take it, that his restraint is a choice, that he's powerful enough to refuse himself. Elena, he says as I'm leaving, the debt is $1.2 million. It's approximately 8% of my annual operating costs. I could forgive it tomorrow and never think about it again. Then why don't you? I ask. He smiles. Because then I never would have met you. Marcus's relief is immediate and absolute, which is worse than anger would be. So the arrangement is, he begins, sitting on our bed while I stand by the window, deliberately not looking at him. I spend time with him, I say, 2 evenings a week. That's it. And the debt is suspended. As long as I'm available to him. The words taste like poison. Available to him. As if I'm a resource, an asset, a thing that can be possessed. And the worst part is that Marcus accepts these terms without protest, without asking what available actually means, without checking whether I'm being coerced. He kisses the top of my head. Thank you, he says. Elena, I know this isn't ideal, and I know you're angry with me, but thank you for. He doesn't finish the sentence, but we both know what he's trying to say. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being willing to be used. Thank you for loving me enough to let yourself be consumed. I don't say anything. I've learned that silence is useful. Silence suggests understanding when I don't understand anything. Silence prevents me from saying things I can't take back. The first official evening, I wear a black dress that feels like armor. Alessio is waiting in the same apartment, but this time he's not cooking. He's standing at the window, and when I arrive, he simply turns and looks at me. You look like you're preparing for war, he says. Maybe I am. He moves toward me, slowly, and I stand very still. This is a test, I think. This is him observing how I handle his proximity. Do you know what you're afraid of? He asks. Everything, I say. Good, he replies. Fear is respect. Fear means you understand that this is real. He takes my hand. His hand is warm, and the sensation of being touched by him is so overwhelming that I have to look away. He leads me to a couch that's positioned to overlook the city, sits down, and pulls me down beside him. Not holding me, but requiring that I sit close enough to be touching his side. Tell me about yourself, he says. Not the version you've told Marcus. Not the version you've convinced yourself is true. Tell me the actual version. So I do. I talk about growing up in a house where love was conditional on achievement. I talk about my mother's disappointment when I chose graphic design instead of law. I talk about how I ended up with Marcus, because he was available, and because I was terrified of being alone, and because somewhere along the way, I lost the ability to distinguish between love and compliance. He listens without interrupting. His arm comes around my shoulders at some point, and I let it stay there because the weight of it feels like permission to be sad. You're more interesting than I expected. he says when I've finished talking about myself in detail I didn't know I was capable of. I was prepared to find you decorative. I expected beauty and softness and limited depth. You're not any of those things, actually. You're sharp. You've just been trained to hide it. Is that a compliment? Yes, he says. It's the highest compliment I know how to give. He doesn't touch me beyond the arm around my shoulders. We sit like that, watching the city get dark, until 11 o'clock when Vincent comes to take me home. The second evening follows a similar pattern conversation, proximity, the deliberate absence of physical intimacy. It should feel safe. Instead, it feels like being slowly pulled underwater. By the third evening, I'm hungry for something I can't articulate. My skin feels too tight. I find myself wearing the dress again, which I know he'll notice, which I want him to notice. You're beautiful when you're desperate, he says, and I could interpret that as an insult, except his voice suggests it's a diagnosis. A fact. An observation about something he's witnessing. I'm not desperate, I lie. You've worn that dress 3 times in 4 weeks, he says. You've started arriving 5 minutes early. You're sleeping less. Your boyfriend has no idea what's happening, which you're grateful for, because his ignorance means you don't have to be complicit in the lie. But you are complicit. We both know that. What do you want from me? I ask, and my voice is shaking. For now? He tucks a strand of hair behind my ear, and the gesture is so gentle it feels impossible coming from him. I want you to understand that desire isn't weakness, that wanting something isn't the same as losing yourself, that you can choose to feel something and still retain your agency. I don't feel like I'm retaining agency, I say. I feel like I'm drowning. You are, he says. That's the point. By week 6, I've made my first real mistake. I'm at work when my phone rings. It's Marcus, and his voice is tight in a way I've learned to recognize as dangerous. I need to see you, he says. After work, don't go to his place today. I text Alessio, my boyfriend needs to see me. I'll reschedule. The response comes immediately, you won't reschedule. The response comes immediately, you won't reschedule. You'll see him. Then you'll come to me. He said it's important. Everything is important until it's not. Come at 8. When I meet Marcus at a coffee shop, he's visibly deteriorating. He's lost weight. He's not shaving. He has the look of someone who's been trying to hold a structural disaster together with his bare hands. What's happening with him? Marcus asks. We talk, I say. That's it. You're in love with him. The accusation is stated so simply, so matter-of-factly that I can't dismiss it with a lie. Instead, I say, I don't know what I am. You're throwing your life away for a man who owns you, Marcus says. And there's actual pain in his voice, which might be the first genuine emotion he's expressed toward me in the entire duration of our relationship. Elena, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I put you in this position. I'm sorry I owed money to someone like that. I'm sorry that falling in love with me has destroyed your actual life for a life of what? I ask. Of becoming someone who matters to someone powerful? Of becoming someone's possession, he says. Maybe I want to be possessed, I say. And the moment the words leave my mouth, I know they're true. Maybe I've spent my entire life trying to be loved by people who were afraid of me. And now I'm in a position to be wanted by someone who isn't afraid. That's not destruction, Marcus. That's the opposite of destruction. He flinches like I've struck him. I leave him at the coffee shop and go directly to Alessio's building. Vincent is waiting, which means Alessio already knew what was happening. I'm not surprised by this. I'm learning that Alessio always knows. Information is a form of power, and he knows how to collect it. When I enter the apartment, he's pouring wine. You chose me, he says. It's not a question. I chose myself, I correct, and choosing myself apparently means choosing you. He hands me the glass and pulls me close. This close, I can feel the tension in his chest, the careful control he's maintaining. I want you to be sure, he says. Because once we cross a certain line, we don't come back from it. You understand that? Yes, I say. You understand that your boyfriend will have to accept this? That the debt will become personal rather than financial? Yes, I say again. You understand that you're about to become something complicated and compromised and impossible to separate from me. I nod because words feel unnecessary. I'm already complicated and compromised. I've been since the moment I smiled at him at that dinner. He sets down both our glasses and takes my face in his hands. I'm going to ask you directly, he says. And I need you to answer honestly. Do you want me to touch you? I could lie. I could say I don't want anything. I could protect some version of myself that I don't actually believe in anymore. Instead, I say yes. He kisses me with the intensity of someone who's been practicing restraint for 6 weeks and has finally been given permission to stop. His hands are in my hair, pulling me deeper into the kiss, and I'm shaking because this is what I've been hungry for. This is what my body has been trying to tell me, that some forms of surrender are not about losing yourself, that some forms of surrender are about finally becoming yourself. He doesn't rush. After that first kiss that feels like both beginning and ending, Alessio guides me to the bedroom, which is exactly as austere as the rest of the apartment. Large bed, dark sheets, windows overlooking the city. He sits on the edge and pulls me down beside him. And then we're simply sitting, our hands intertwined, and the anticipation of what's coming next is almost unbearable. Tell me if you want to stop, he says. Tell me if anything feels wrong. Tell me if you need me to. I won't, I interrupt. I won't need you to stop. You can't promise that, he says. You don't know what you're capable of until you're in the moment. Tell me now that you understand the possibility that you might ask me to stop, and I will honor that request. I understand, I say, and I'm still here. He stands and pulls me up with him, and then he's removing my dress with a care that suggests the removal of clothing is something that can be done tenderly. He's looking at me, not in a predatory way, but in a way that suggests he's witnessing something sacred. You're nervous, he says. Terrified, I correct. Good, he replies. Nervous means you're paying attention. He lays me down and lies beside me, and his hand traces patterns on my arm that are so light they're almost not touching at all. He's not trying to rush this to a conclusion. He seems content to exist in this space of anticipation, of tension, of slow-building desire. Why are you being so careful? I ask. Because if I'm not, he says, if I let myself move too fast, I'm going to hurt you. And I've spent 6 weeks learning how to want you in a way that doesn't cause destruction. But you do cause destruction, I say. That's what you do. Yes, he says, and his hand stops moving. But not to you. Never to you. When he finally moves over me, it's slow and deliberate. He's watching my face, waiting for any sign of discomfort, and I'm trying not to cry because the weight of him, the reality of him, the fact that this is actually happening is overwhelming in a way that doesn't have language. It's not like anything I expected. It's not particularly physical. He's moving slowly enough that it could almost be gentle, and the sensation is less about pleasure and more about presence, about being completely inhabited by another person, about allowing someone to matter that much. Look at me, he says, and I open my eyes, which I don't remember closing. He's looking at me with an expression that seems to contain multitudes' tenderness and dominance, and something that might be love, though I'm not sure he's capable of that. You're mine now, he says, and his voice is quiet, which makes it infinitely more powerful. Do you understand that? Yes, I whisper, after. We lie in the dark, and he holds me against his chest, and I can feel his heartbeat, which is slightly elevated, which suggests that he's not as controlled as he pretends to be. We don't speak for a long time. There's nothing left that needs to be said. I don't want you to go home, he says eventually. I have to, I say. Marcus will accept whatever happens, Alessio says. You're going to call him tomorrow and tell him you're not coming back to that apartment. You're going to tell him that you're going to stay here, with me, and that this arrangement is no longer conditional, it's permanent. That's not, I start to protest. It's not negotiable, he finishes. I've spent 6 weeks teaching myself to want you without completely consuming you. That's the extent of my compromise. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life wondering if you're going to leave. So this is still just leverage, I say. I'm still just a way to ensure Marcus pays the debt. No, he says, and his hand comes up to touch my face. The debt doesn't exist anymore. I absorbed it. Consider it the cost of acquisition. Acquisition, I repeat. So I'm something you've bought. Something I've claimed, he corrects. And yes, there's a distinction, and yes, I understand why you're making that face. But we both know that some love looks like ownership. Some love is dark. And I'm not going to apologize for wanting you in the most fundamental way that someone like me is capable of wanting anything. I call Marcus the next morning. Don't, he says before I've explained anything. Elena, please don't do this. I'm doing it, I say quietly. I'm not coming back to the apartment. My stuff can stay for now, but I'm not coming back. You don't understand what he is, Marcus says. You don't understand what being with someone like that means. You're going to spend the rest of your life at his mercy. You're going to watch him hurt people. You're going to become someone you don't recognize. Maybe, I say. Maybe that's a risk I'm willing to take. Because you love him. Because I choose him, I say. And choice is the only thing that's ever been mine before right now. He's quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, he says. I'm sorry for everything. I hang up without responding, and I don't look back. Living with Alessio is like living inside a controlled descent. Every moment is precisely calibrated. Every gesture has meaning. He moves through his world with the kind of efficiency that suggests he spent decades optimizing existence into something manageable. I move through his world and try not to disrupt the architecture. But inevitably, you cannot insert a new human into someone else's carefully constructed life without creating fractures. The first fracture comes when Alessio has to leave for business. He's gone for 5 days, and for the first 3, I'm fine. I've brought clothes to the apartment. I've learned the rhythm of his home. I've established a comfortable routine. But on the 3rd night alone, I find myself in his office, looking through drawers that I know I shouldn't open. I find photographs. They're of people, mostly men, and many of them are dead. Not in a literal sense. These are photographs of living people. But in the sense that you can see the death that surrounds them, the violence that lives in their families, the knowledge that they exist in a world where destruction is merely a transaction away. I find financial records, names crossed out, debts annotated with what looks like blood but is probably just red ink. I find a photograph of a woman who looks enough like Alessio to be his sister, and she's smiling and she's leaning against the side of a car, and there's a date on the back, 2003, 22 years ago. I find a letter, still in its envelope, addressed to Alessio in handwriting that matches the back of the photograph. I don't open it, but the fact that I found it, the fact that I now know it exists, feels like a violation of some code I was supposed to understand without being told. When Alessio returns, he can see immediately that something is different. He can read me now. It's terrifying and useful, so he knows that I've done something I shouldn't have. You went into my office, he says. It's not a question. Yes, I admit. Why? Because I don't actually know who you are, I say. I know what I feel when I'm with you. I know that you're dangerous and controlled, and that you have power over people. But I don't know the actual architecture of who you are. I don't know what you've done, or who you've hurt, or whether the person you are with me is the real version, or if it's a performance. He's quiet for a very long time. There are reasons I don't talk about those things, he finally says. There are reasons I keep those parts of my life compartmentalized. I know, I say, but I can't live with someone and not know them. I can't go to sleep next to someone and pretend that I believe they're good when I know they've done things that what? He interrupts. That are bad? That are moral failures? That would make you question why you're here? Yes, I say simply. He moves to his bedroom and gets the photograph of his sister. He comes back and hands it to me. Her name was Lucia, he says. She was 16 years younger than me. She was kind in a way that our family was not, and she had dreams that didn't involve this world. I look at the date again. Was? I ask. She died in 2006, he says. Car accident, officially. A bullet in the engine, actually. She was 3 months away from graduating university. She was going to be a teacher. I'm sorry, I say, and the words feel completely inadequate. I was not the person I am now, he continues. I was going to leave this world. I was going to take her with me, and we were going to create some version of a normal life. But I made a promise to my father before he died, and I was keeping that promise, and I didn't see the necessity of leaving soon. And then she died, I say. And then she died, he confirms. And I learned that some choices can't be delayed, that some deaths are more important than other deaths, that protecting people you love requires a level of ruthlessness that most people can't stomach. He takes the photograph back and looks at it for a moment. After she died, I become what I am now, completely, not partially. There was no more hedging, no more long-term plans to exit. I committed entirely to this life because I realized that being halfway in is what gets people killed. Do you regret it? I ask. Every day, he says. And not at all. The two can be simultaneously true. He tells me about the people in the other photographs. He tells me about the systems he's built, the territories he controls, the way that power operates in the spaces where law doesn't reach. He tells me about violence, in a way that doesn't glorify it but doesn't minimize it either. He tells me about compromise, about ethics that exist only in shadow, about what it means to be a good person in a world that doesn't have a category for good people anymore. By the end, I'm crying, and he's holding me, and I'm not even sure if I'm crying for his sister, or for the boy he was before she died, or for the fact that love, real, deep, consuming love apparently requires learning to love people for who they are, not who we wish they would be. I want you to understand something, he says into my hair. You came here as leverage. You came here as a way to control your boyfriend, to ensure compliance, and I'm not going to insult you by pretending that's not what you were initially. But that's not what you are now. And I need you to know that I'm aware of the difference. You're not a hostage anymore, Elena. You're not a debt payment. You're a choice that I'm making every day to keep you, and that choice is not contingent on your boyfriend's compliance. How is that possible? I ask. How is any of this possible? Love, he says, and it's the first time he's used that word with me directly. And the sound of it in his voice is like something essential shifting. I love you. It's inconvenient, and it complicates things, and it makes me vulnerable in ways that I don't particularly enjoy. But I love you, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise anymore. The next morning, I call my therapist and tell her I need to increase my sessions to twice a week. Doctor, Sarah doesn't ask questions beyond the logistical ones, but her expression when I finally tell her about Alessio suggests that she's been expecting this conversation for months. That she's been waiting for me to develop an attachment that seems impossible from the outside, but feels necessary from within. Do you feel safe? She asks. Yes, I say. And that's the problem, because I don't think I should feel safe. I think I should feel terrified. Should is a complicated word, she says. Let me ask you differently. Do you want to leave? No. Do you feel like you're being coerced? I was initially, I say. But that's not what this is anymore. It's not leverage. It's not payment. I'm choosing to be there. And that frightens you, she says. It's not a question. Yes, I admit, because it means I'm capable of loving someone who does things that I don't morally approve of. It means I'm not the person I thought I was. It means I'm compromising in ways that should make me hate myself, and instead, I'm happy. Dr. Sarah sits with that statement for a moment. I'm going to ask you something, she says, and I want you to answer honestly, even if the answer is not the answer you think I want to hear. Are you in danger? Not metaphorical danger. Actual danger from this person. No, I say, and I mean it with absolute certainty. He would hurt other people to keep me safe. I don't think he would ever hurt me. Then I think you're in a relationship with a complex person who loves you, Dr. Sarah says. And I think part of you is struggling with that because you were taught that love was supposed to be uncomplicated and good and easy. But you're an adult, and you're capable of choosing complicated love, and sometimes that choice is more authentic than any choice you've made before. 3 weeks later, Alessio asks me to go somewhere with him. I need to show you something, is all he'll say. Vincent drives us out of the city, into neighborhoods that get increasingly residential, until we pull up to a cemetery. We get out of the car, and Alessio leads me through rows of graves until we reach one that's been maintained carefully, with fresh flowers. Lucia Moretti, 1987-2006. I visit her every month, Alessio says, and I talk to her about my life. I told her about you 3 weeks ago. What did you tell her? I ask. That I loved someone who was soft and intelligent and terrified of her own strength, he says. That I was trying to be better because of that person. That I was learning that love wasn't the same as control. That it was possible to want something and let it breathe at the same time. Do you think she would approve? I ask. I think she would tell me to stop being dramatic about it, he says with a slight smile. She always did have a good sense of humor. We stand there for a long time, and then he takes my hand and we walk back to the car. I want to give you something, he says when we're back at the apartment. He pulls out a small box and hands it to me. Inside is a key, an actual key, old-fashioned, made of bronze. What's this? I ask. A safe house, he says. In another state, far from here. If anything ever happens, if you ever feel unsafe or threatened or like you need to leave, that key opens that house. It's funded. It's supplied. There's money there, documentation, everything you would need to disappear. Why are you giving me this? I ask. Because I love you, he says simply. And love, in my worlds, means ensuring that the person you love has options, even if one of those options is leaving me. I take the key, but I know I will never use it. Not because I can't imagine scenarios where I might need it, but because I can't imagine wanting to exist in a world where Alessio Moretti isn't part of the architecture. There's something else, he says. Something I need to tell you about Marcus. My stomach drops. What happened? I ask. Nothing happened, he says. But the debt, the one I told you I absorbed, I lied. I didn't absorb it. I forgave it. And the reason I forgave it was that I realized something. What? That if I wanted to keep you, it couldn't be contingent on your boyfriend's debt. It had to be clean. It had to be something that you chose freely, without the weight of knowing that his life was dependent on your compliance. You forgave a $1.2 million debt, I say slowly. Yes, he replies. For you. That's insane, I say. Yes, he agrees. I'm aware. But apparently I'm the kind of person who does insane things when properly motivated. I should feel trapped. I should feel the weight of this, the impossible price he's paid for the privilege of keeping me. Instead, I feel something closer to understanding. This is how Alessio loves, with absolute commitment, with the willingness to destabilize his own systems, with the acceptance that some things can't be bartered or negotiated or controlled. He loves the way he does everything else, completely and without compromise. Trouble comes from a direction I didn't anticipate. I'm alone in the apartment when Vincent enters without knocking, something that's never happened before. His face is tight in a way that suggests violence, and he's carrying a file folder. There's been a problem, he says. Where's Alessio? I ask. Dealing with it, Vincent says. But you need to see this. The folder contains financial records, all of them pertaining to Marcus. But these aren't old records, these are recent. And they show that Marcus has been systematically stealing from Alessio's organization for the past 6 months. This is impossible, I say. Marcus isn't smart enough to. He wasn't acting alone, Vincent says. He was working with a rival family. They were using him to move money, to destabilize operations, to create vulnerabilities in the supply chain. What does that mean? I ask, though I think I already know. It means Marcus is dead, Vincent says simply. Alessio's men found him 2 hours ago. They're moving the body now. I think I'm going to be sick. But I'm also thinking, with a clarity that's disturbingly calm, that this was inevitable. Marcus was never going to survive the weight of the world he'd positioned himself in. This was always going to be how it ended. What about me? I ask. That depends on whether Alessio believes you knew about this, Vincent says. Whether this is something you were complicit in. I wasn't, I say. Marcus barely spoke to me. I didn't know anything about. I stop, because the realization is hitting me. He asked me to see him 6 weeks ago. He said he needed to talk. I went, and then I came directly to Alessio's. And what did Marcus tell you? That I was throwing my life away. That Alessio was using me, I say. That I didn't understand what I was involved in. Do you? Vincent asks. Yes, I say. I understand exactly what I'm involved in. I'm involved in loving someone who operates in a world where that love requires accepting violence as a consequence of principle. I accepted that when I chose to stay. When Alessio finally comes home, he looks like he's been immersed in something dark. His clothes are pristine, he's changed, but his hands are shaking slightly, which is the only sign that he's been involved in something messy. You know, he says. Vincent told me, I reply, about Marcus, about what he was doing. Are you shocked? He asks. No, I say, disappointed that he was stupid enough to think he could betray you and survive, sad that he's dead, but not shocked that the death came for him. He looks at me for a long moment, and something in his expression shifts. You're not afraid of me, he says. I am, I correct, but not afraid enough to leave. And that's a different kind of fear. He crosses to me and pulls me close, and I can feel him trembling. The powerful, controlled Alessio Moretti is trembling like a normal man, like someone who's just been confronted with the consequences of his choices, like someone who's worried that the person he loves is going to leave him. I killed him, Alessio says into my hair. Not personally, but I ordered it. He was a threat to the organization. He was working with people who are trying to destabilize what I've built, and I eliminated the threat. I know, I say, and you're still here. I'm still here, I confirm. He holds me, and we both acknowledge in that moment what it means that I'm still here. It means I've crossed over completely. It means I'm no longer someone who just loves him despite what he is. I'm someone who loves him, and understands what he is, and accepts that the two are inseparable. That night, he makes love to me with a kind of desperation, like he's trying to reassure himself that I'm still real, still here, still willing to exist in this life with him. And I let him, because the truth is that I want him to mark me, want him to make it undeniable that I belong to him, want him to leave no room for doubt about who I've chosen to be. Afterward, he asks me, "Do you want to marry me?" The question is so abrupt, so completely unmarked by any of the usual preamble of romance, that I almost laugh. Yes, I say. Good, he replies, because I'm going to ask you properly in about 3 months, and I need to know you're going to say yes before I arrange for a proper proposal. You're going to arrange for a proper proposal? I ask. Yes, he says, because I'm learning that some rituals matter, even if they seem meaningless. Because you're someone who matters, and that means the way I claim you should matter as well. 3 months later, he does propose. It happens at the cemetery, in front of his sister's grave, and he's on one knee with a ring that's probably significant enough to be in a museum. And he's telling me that he loves me in a voice that seems to come from somewhere real and human and utterly unguarded. Yes, I say before he finishes the question. Yes, I'm going to marry you. The wedding happens 2 months after that, and it's the kind of wedding that exists in shadow. There are no guest lists, in the traditional sense. Just people who matter. People from both sides of his world. People who understand that this union isn't about love, but about consolidation. Except it is about love. It's about love expressed in the language of power and control and absolute commitment. I wear white, which feels like a provocation and a promise. He wears black, which feels like honesty. And when he looks at me during the vows, there's something in his expression that suggests he still can't quite believe that I stayed, that I'm choosing to stay, that I'm choosing to be his wife in the most fundamental way. I love you, I say in my vows, and it's the simplest thing I'll ever say about the most complicated person I'll ever love. I love you completely and without reservation, and with full knowledge of what that means. I love you, he says in his, and his voice is quiet enough that only I can hear it. I love you more than I've ever loved anything, more than I love myself, more than I love the empire I've built. You matter more than anything else I've accumulated. After the ceremony, we return to our apartment, and he makes love to me with a kind of tenderness that feels almost heartbreaking. And afterward, we lie in the dark, and he doesn't speak, and I don't speak. and the silence feels like the truest conversation we've ever had. Life becomes different after that. I go back to work, though Alessio has offered to ensure I never have to again. I design graphics and thumbnails and branding packages for companies that will never know that the woman creating their visual identity is married to one of the most powerful men in the city. I maintain the separation between my life and his, which he requires, which gives me a compartment of existence that's solely mine. He begins to change the operations of his organization. Not drastically. He's not naive enough to think that love makes violence unnecessary, but he begins to scale back operations that are purely destructive. He begins to prioritize protection of his people over expansion of territory. He begins to make decisions that a rational businessman would recognize as less profitable, but that a man in love might recognize as more bearable. You're softening, Vincent tells him once, and I hear it because I'm listening from the kitchen. Yes, Alessio agrees, that's intentional. It makes you vulnerable, Vincent warns. Everything worthwhile is vulnerable, Alessio replies. And I've learned that there are things worth being vulnerable for. 9 months into our marriage, I get pregnant. We don't plan it exactly, but we don't prevent it either. And when I realize what's happening, Alessio's reaction is the first time I've ever seen him truly afraid. I'm going to be a terrible father, he says. Probably, I agree, but that's okay. I'm going to be a neurotic mother, and our kid will work it out with a therapist eventually. He actually laughs and pulls me close. Is that a joke? He asks. Yes, I say. I'm making a joke about our child's future therapy needs. I'm committed to this relationship now. When our daughter is born, I watch Alessio hold her like she's made of something too fragile to support. And I realize that this is what loving him has given me, not happiness exactly, but something deeper. A life that matters. A life that's been hard-won and difficult and compromised and real. A life where I'm not trying to be someone else's version of myself anymore. Dr. Sarah asks me once, years into marriage and motherhood, whether I regret anything. I regret that Marcus died, I say honestly. I regret that he got caught in something that destroyed him, but I don't regret the path that led me to Alessio, and I don't regret the woman I became in order to survive loving him. That's a significant distinction, she says. Yes, I agree. It is. We live quietly for a long time. There's a house, now the one I never used, the safe house with the bronze key, but it's become a place we visit on weekends, where Alessio watches our daughter run through gardens that he's had designed specifically for her, where he's softer than he is anywhere else. The business continues. The violence continues. There are still decisions that destroy people, consequences that ripple outward, debts that demand collection. But I'm farther from those things now, or I'm more willing to accept them as the price of the world I've chosen. What I know is this. I love him. Not despite what he is, but including what he is. The two things are inseparable now. We've been married for 5 years. When someone tries to kill him, it's not dramatic or cinematic. It's a car bomb that kills 2 of his men instead, and it destabilizes everything in ways that a threat usually does. It reminds him that power is temporary, that vulnerability exists whether he chooses to acknowledge it or not, that loving someone means accepting that you have things to lose. For 3 weeks, he becomes someone I don't recognize. He's cold and controlled and distant. And I know he's spiraling, not because of the threat itself, but because the threat represented how much he has to lose now. How much I matter. How much our daughter matters. One night, I find him in his office, holding the photograph of his sister. I'm going to stop, he says. I'm going to find someone to take over the organization, and I'm going to stop. You can't, I say gently. You've tried. You know you can't stop. I don't want our daughter to grow up in this world, he says. I don't want her to understand that her father is someone who loves her enough to be both good and bad, I interrupt. She'll understand that eventually. She'll understand that people are complicated, that love exists in places that don't have simple narratives. How are you so certain? He asks. Because you're certain, I say, and she's your daughter. She's going to inherit your ability to see the world clearly, to understand consequence, to accept that some compromises are necessary. He doesn't stop, but he does slow down. He does make changes. He does work toward a version of his life where power is maintained but violence is minimized, where empire is sustained but doesn't require constant expansion. He does it for her, for us, for the family that he never thought he would have. Years later, when our daughter is old enough to understand the basics of what her father does, she asks me, "Why do you stay with him?" "Because I love him," I say. "Even though he does bad things?" she asks. "Even though he does bad things," I confirm. Because love isn't conditional on someone being perfect. Love is what remains when you've seen the worst part of someone and you choose to stay anyway. She considers this with the seriousness of someone who's inherited her father's ability to contemplate consequence. "Do you think he loves you?" she finally asks. "Yes," I say. "I think he loves me in a way that will destroy him if anything ever happens to me. I think he loves me in a way that's not entirely healthy or balanced, but it's real and true and undeniable. Like how he loved his sister?" "Similar," I say, "but different. Your aunt taught him what it means to sacrifice for someone you love. But he learned from me that you can sacrifice without destroying yourself, that you can be both powerful and tender, both dangerous and capable of devotion." She seems satisfied with this answer. Later, when Alessio asks what we were talking about, I tell him she was asking about why I love him. "And what did you tell her?" he asks. "That you're the person I chose," I say. "That I walked into a life that most people would find unthinkable, and I did it willingly, and I would make the same choice again." He kisses me, and it's gentle, which is how he usually kisses me these days, when we're not in the privacy of our bedroom. And I'm struck, as I am sometimes struck, by the impossible reality of this life. The girl who smiled nervously at dinner is gone. But she's not been replaced by someone broken or destroyed. She's been refined, complicated, full of knowledge that most people never have to gather. I've been loved by someone dangerous, and I've learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing a person can do is choose to stay. Alessio stands at the window of the apartment. We still keep it, even though we don't live there anymore, and looks out at the city that's made him and that he shaped. And I come to stand beside him, and we don't speak because there's nothing left that needs to be said. The weight of what we've built is between us, the violence and the tenderness, the compromise and the commitment, the fact that we've somehow created a life that works despite having no template for what that life should be. "I'm sorry I had to teach you these things," he says quietly. "I'm not," I reply. "This life chose me, and I chose back." There's a shadow that follows us, the shadow of what he does, of what we've both accepted, of the violence that sustains the world we've built. We don't pretend it's not there. We simply live alongside it, understanding that light and shadow exist together, that love in the darkness is still love, that choosing someone despite everything means understanding that everything will always be true. I smile at him, and he smiles back. And it's not the nervous smile I gave him that first night. It's the smile of someone who understands exactly what she's chosen. And he's the man who would burn the world to keep her safe.